Viewers and subscribers, welcome back to Beating the Press podcast. I am your host, Rafa. Now, coming up in this evening's podcast, we're going to be looking back at the Europa League final. Spurs running away, big winners, first trophy in many years. And of course, we'll be looking ahead to the EPL action. It's the final weekend of the EPL season. And we have that dogfight for those Champions League positions undecided. Now, of course, joining me this evening to talk some EPL football, we have returning to the podcast, Christoph.
Good to be back, viewers.
Yes, indeed, Christoph. Nowhere else but to start over there at your arch rival, your arch nemesis. Spurs, not London rivals, Christoph. Spurs getting their first trophy in many a years, getting the better of Manchester United over there in the Europa League, 1-0. Seems to be courtesy of Luke Shaw own goal as well. What's your take on
Um,
that game? Give us your feedback.
yeah, very good for Spurs winning their first trophy in probably 50 plus years, to be
Says
honest.
seven. I think it's 17 years if the reports are to be believed. At 17-year drought in terms
Uh,
of an actual trophy.
I don't know. That don't sound right, but okay. It don't sound right, but okay. Yeah. Good for Spurs. However, for anybody who wasn't a Spurs fan, the neutrals, the Man U fans, it was one of the most horrendous games of football I've ever seen, and it's not down to um, you know, anti-football or anything like that. It was just the poor quality from both teams on display. It was I guess you could say it was exactly what it was. It looked like a match between two relegation teams, to be honest.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, definitely. I mean, it's the second tier of European football. It's the teams who just escaped the relegation drop in the EPL, going up head to head. Two teams in actually very poor form as well. And I mean, a very low scoreline, a 1-0 victory was not a surprising outcome at all. It
One shot
just
on goal from Spurs, one horrendous goal.
you're saying
Spurs,
you're not
Spurs.
you weren't impressed by the display then.
I was not impressed by anything in that match. Spurs again will be very happy to have won the trophy, but it cannot paper over how horrendous the season has been. It
Well, I
cannot.
mean, for the coach Ange, promise made, promise kept. Ange did
Oh,
come out with the bold
definitely.
statement
He did
earlier in the
say that
seasons.
he wins trophies his second season. He said it last season, he said it this season. Good on him. I think he should still walk. I think he should walk.
Even
Up
after winning, breaking this drought.
but I said it to you even before. I said whether he wins or loses, he should walk.
Oh,
The
you're saying
Bayern,
he should walk
yeah,
and not necessarily. Okay.
The Leverkusen job
But
is
why
up for
would he
grabs.
walk? Is it a case where he's not being supported by the board? What's the rationale for walking? Is it the
Um,
pressure is too much?
no, I don't know whether or not he's been supported by the board or not. But if we go back to even last season, we can see that he was very displeased with the squad. Not throughout the season, but closer to the end of the season, he was very displeased with his squad. He was very displeased with the fans, from what I can tell. Especially after that Manchester City game, if you recall, very
I
displeased.
mean, by then, all should be forgiven at that point in
I
time. I
no
mean,
no no I don't think so. I don't think so. And the fans definitely, I guess, were very displeased with him this season. Tottenham have lost more than half the games in the season, and they have barely escaped relegation. So,
yeah, but at the end of the day, they did pick up a
Ange,
trophy,
I
Christoph. The naysayers will say, hey,
no,
we
I
did win silverware.
you
We're
you
in the
want
Champions League. We probably had a better season than, let's say, Arsenal.
they did not have a better season than Arsenal. Even
Well, I
winning the
mean,
Europa
some
League,
would argue. I mean,
some
I
will
don't know.
argue. Some will argue the
Yeah, I guess with the
feelings,
trophy, they can make that argument.
the passion will come out. But logically, They did not
Mm,
have a better season than Arsenal. They won a trophy, but they won a second tier trophy. All right. You can't judge Arsenal's season based on the Europa League when Arsenal was competing in the Champions League with
that's
better
true. That's
teams
true.
and a more difficult competition. Um, Again, one of those things is that you can't judge a knockout competition, your performance in a knockout competition, because teams have won the Champions League and failed to even make the top four. So it's not quite the same, right?
Yeah, it's difficult at
Tot,
times for
Tot,
team to compete on two
Tottenham
fronts.
must be happy they have won the trophy. They have gotten into the Champions League, and potentially this summer they can make big signings because they're in the Champions League. However, internally, not necessarily outward to the fans, but internally, the season must be judged on that league performance. Losing
Mm,
over half the games for the season
not a
cannot
very
be
good season in the
overlooked.
league
It's
then.
not a very good season overall.
So this trophy will only paper over the cracks then. That's obviously in this
I'm
team.
I'm not sure it can even paper over the cracks, right?
I mean, the cracks
Obviously,
are that huge.
the fans, the average fans, they're happy for the trophy.
Which
Fine,
they
that
should
is
be,
which
definitely. I
they
mean,
should be.
congratulations to Spurs.
That is perfectly
It's been
fine,
a
but
it's
it
been a
has
long
been
time.
it has been a horrendous season for Spurs.
Noted, noted for sure, noted.
And
But
it again, it must not be overlooked.
if
Internally, the
it's been
board needs to.
horrendous for Spurs, what has it been for Manchester United, Christoph? I mean, they
Ah,
end the season empty-handed, really.
not, but it's the same thing. It is
Or this may be a blessing in disguise, where next season they can fully revamp the side and concentrate only on the league. That
they
might be
could
a blessing in disguise.
it, it it might be a blessing in disguise that
Yeah, that will
they
give the
only
manager
have to
all
focus.
week to prepare the
Eh,
team
they only have to
for
focus
the games on the weekend.
on domestic competitions.
Right.
The problem here for United though is, from what I can tell, United had plans laid out for signings and such because they thought they were going to win the Europa League and then qualify for the Champions League.
Mm.
Those plans must now go back to the drawing board because a lot of those signings potentially not coming to a team that's not playing in the Champions
Well,
League.
again, that might be a blessing in disguise in that you're getting players who want to actually be at the club and not necessarily
That
being
that
lured by the prospect of Champions League football, which seemed to
that
have been the case
yeah,
in the past.
that is fine. That is fine. The problem for United now is you want to revamp. You need to rebuild
Right.
at the moment. This summer should be some spending, some rebuilding. Problem is
Yes.
you have a lot of big name players and big wages that you now need to ship out. How are you going to do that?
So
That
who
is
are
the
these big names and big wages you speak of?
yeah, potentially a Marcus Rashford. Will he stay?
Right.
He has gone to Aston Villa. He has found farm there. Will he want to
Hmm.
continue at United? Maybe he doesn't want to leave United because of that salary. You know, are faced with the prospect of, are we going to sell this player off cheap and then still have to pay a portion of his salary to get rid of him? Are we going to keep him, a player who underperformed at
Well,
United?
what would you do if you were at the helm at United? What's your call?
It
Would you
depends.
sell or keep
It
a
depends on
Rashford?
it depends on the finances.
What do you mean? You're already paying his salary, so
No, I don't. Not like that. I mean, what are United's finances? Can United's absorb the loss of potentially selling Rashford on the cheap, right? Potential, maybe even
no, but
terminating
I
a
mean, based
contract
on your
and letting him
knowledge
go for
of what
free.
you've been seeing going on over the years,
Oh, would I keep or sell Rashford?
yes,
So
that is the question.
I would be selling Rashford.
So you would be looking to offload him then.
I would be looking to offload Rashford.
Okay,
No,
who else would you be looking to offload?
At the moment, somebody like Anthony did not perform for United, but is red hot over in Betis.
Right,
Betis
right.
are keen on keeping him. This is a good chance to cash in.
Okay, so Anthony out the door, Rashford out the door, and probably a few others as well. Maybe a Harry Maguire out the door,
I mean, you could argue,
Casemiro.
Harry Maguire has kind of revitalized and kind of earned his spot,
Well, I
but
mean, we've seen this before.
given
I mean, as soon as
given
things go bad, it goes real
Right.
bad
If
and
I
quick.
was if I was Harry Maguire, I would potentially be looking to leave.
Mm,
Casemiro will probably leave, given that he had a clause in his contract that said if United, made it to Champions League football, then he would have gotten a huge bonus. That was probably what he was banking on. No Champions League. Probably see him after Saudi Arabia in the summer.
mhm. But I
Garnacho's
mean, these
future is
movements
probably
could
up in
very
the
well
air.
help United in the long run, in all honesty. I mean, looking
No, I'm not.
ahead.
I'm not
And
saying
as I
that is
said, this could possibly be a blessing in disguise. The fact that they lost that Europa League final, no Champions League, no Europe come next season. The coach is there. We'll have the team to prepare for the entire week and concentrate on league games on the weekend. So this to me could be a blessing in disguise for United. The distraction of Europe is out the window, and then you rotate your players maybe in those squad matches. I mean, in those cup matches, the League Cup, the FA Cup. You give the squad players a run out, so to speak. So to me, I would think this is a blessing in disguise, and this really gives United a fresh blueprint to build from, a base. Amarin in its first full season, possibly getting a preseason under his belt, a few new signings coming in. I think things should be positive for United going into the next season, Christoph. What says you? Shouldn't be United be looking up as opposed to looking down?
I don't know. I don't know.
Time will tell. Time will tell
You
then.
could be looking up, right? Amarin didn't get a transfer
I
window.
see positives.
I see positives, but I see negatives too. On one hand, Amarin now gets an opportunity to go in and get the players that he wants into the squad. Get training in over the summer. Get people ticking how he wants them. On the flip side, it could be more of the same next season. It's not like Amarin came, halfway through the season, January or something. He managed a lot of games for United, more than half the season.
He did come in January.
No, he didn't. He came in
Wait,
before that.
well, he started. He came in, but remember Van Nistelrooy took over a few games,
Right.
and then he came in pretty much in January, I would say, halfway through the season.
Amarin
I
got
mean,
more than
definitely
half the
he got
games
a
in the
lot of
season.
games under
He
his
got more
belt
than
for
half the
sure.
games in the season.
Yeah, I mean,
So
he would have gotten an opportunity to see the full potential of the players on the books and know who he wants to keep or let go going forward. So again, that opportunity, he got a chance up close and personal to see, interact, and know the players that he would want going forward. So that's what
mm,
I'm saying. It's all positive. You definitely know now who are the players you want to go forward with. You've seen them in a final. You've seen how they handle pressure. You've been observing and watching them in training, and you should know who are the players who can carry out your system, your philosophy, as opposed to those who can't. So again, I'm seeing positives for United, but again, time will tell. Time will definitely tell, and we'll see what the new season brings. But the season is not over, Christoph. There is still one game in the EPL to go, one game to decide it all for those teams in the running for Champions League football, and we still have a number of teams who can either make it in with a good result or be completely left out with a bad result. And those, to me, are the games that we should be keeping a very close eye on in this final round of fixture. First up, and probably the most fascinating of these games, Christoph, is Nottingham Forest versus Chelsea. To me, this is a straight shootout for a Champions League spot, Christoph. Whoever win this game get Champions League football come next season. Whoever loses is out. Probably have to play their football in the Europa League. How are you seeing that matchup? How are you seeing that game? And who do you think will eventually run out playing in the Champions League comes next season?
it's potentially a game with a lot of fireworks. Nottingham Forest will be looking, they've played very strong on the counter attack and they do get early goals. Getting early goals, one or two early goals are Chelsea could spell the end for them and they could go on and win that game. We know, Chelsea struggles, like we've said, very struggles with if Cole Palmer does not play well. Cole Palmer also seems to do a lot better when he's in a team or if when the team is playing on the transition and he can counter attack and there's a lot of space, he tends to get those goals. The question is how will Nottingham Forest, I think, play to their strengths on the counter attack? Will they absorb, soak up pressure and then hit on the counter? Which I think would completely just kill off Chelsea in my opinion. I think Nottingham Forest have more about them and could potentially go on to make that Champions League spot. The last couple of weeks for them have been very spotty, to say the least. Only two wins in the last five, two draws and a loss. Not to mention that what appeared to be a falling out some weeks ago, um, two
I mean,
weeks
since
ago.
that falling out, they've bounced back with a couple of victories since then.
Well,
Coming off a win versus
they
West Ham in
they
particular.
bounced back. They've bounced back with one
Right.
win. But
That was against West Ham
will
in
that
their last
continue?
game.
Will that continue into the next game? That is what they need. They need that momentum to carry them into the next
Definitely.
game
I feel it
and go
will.
on.
I feel it will, especially playing at home. I would have had more concern if they were playing away from home. But it should be a jubilant atmosphere at that Forest Stadium, Christoph. I mean, this is Chelsea versus Forest. This is for all the marbles. This is to cap the tremendous season that Nottingham Forest in particular have had since this season. I think they have made the biggest jump in terms of the number of points they got last season compared to the number of points they have had thus far this season. It has been a massive improvement job under Espirito Santos. So this victory, a victory over Chelsea, would just cap what a tremendous season they've had, and it would just put the icing on the cake if they were able to qualify for Champions League. Because as it stands now, Christoph, you have Liverpool declared winners, 83 points, nothing to play for. Chelsea, I mean, Arsenal is on 71. They have pretty much booked their spot as well. So, regardless of the other results, Arsenal will be playing Champions League football come next season. City sits third on 68 points. I think they are halfway there. Uh, if any of the other teams chasing them draw, then City is in. So that's the benefit of City. City pretty much just in their last game probably just doesn't want to lose just to ensure that they're there come at the end of the day. So City, I think, is safe as well. Then comes the other four teams, and that's where the competition lie because Newcastle is on 66 points, Chelsea is on 66 points. Newcastle has a slight advantage there, Christoph, because they're on plus 22 and Chelsea is on plus 20. So right away, that is very closely knitted right there. Aston Villa is also on 66 points. They have a goal difference of plus 9. And then to round things off, you have Forest on 65 points with a plus 13 goal difference. So Forest for sure needs a win. A win for Forest is a must because even if they draw and the other teams draw, they will be out based on the goal difference. So for Forest, it has to be a win. Uh Aston Villa, they play Manchester United, who should be reeling from that loss versus Spurs in the Europa League. So to me, once Aston Villa can bring close to their A game, they should get a win. So I'm gonna count Aston Villa as a win. It should be a tough game for Newcastle as well, but again, they are playing Everton, who really has nothing to lose. They have secured themselves in the league for another season. They can't be relegated. They can't make it into Europe. They're just seeing the fixture out. Nothing to play for. Newcastle is also at home. The fans at home should be driving them forward in order to get a victory over a Everton team, which should have zero motivation, to be honest. So I would give Newcastle the edge as well. And then it pretty much boils down to between Chelsea and Forest, Christoph. So that's why I'm saying, to me, that is the game that will determine the final spot. So I'm calling a win for Newcastle, which should take them to 69 points. I'm also calling a win for Aston Villa, which should also take them to 69 points. So they would be sitting just behind City if Man City was to either get a draw or a win in their game. So City just need to avoid defeat and they should be pretty safe. Once City avoids defeat versus Fulham, they should be good to go, which I think they should be able to do versus a Fulham team, which is a similar situation to Everton. Can't finish in Europe, can't be relegated. They're just seeing out the fixture in real time. Not much motivation there. But the big game, to me, that is the game that's going to decide that final spot in the Champions League. It has to be Forest versus Chelsea because those are two competing teams. This is like a Champions League six-pointer, Christoph. Whoever wins this game takes that spot. How are you calling this one, Christoph? You've spoken about the form of Forest, not so good form coming into this one, similar to Chelsea, but who takes the marbles at the end of this game?
I give the edge to Nottingham Forest. I think Nottingham Forest potentially win this 2-1.
Forest to win 2-1. I can see nothing other than a Forest win. Also, I just think the advantage at home court advantage, that is where I think they will take advantage of this Chelsea team. The fans. So even if they go down to an early goal, the fans will keep them motivated all game, to be honest. And they have the confidence at home. Uh, they have the confidence. Chelsea doesn't possess the best defense, nor are they blowing teams away with their offensive power either. So for me, I'm gonna have to go with a Forest win as well. But rather than calling this one 2-1, I think this is gonna be a very closely fought game. But I believe Forest will pinch it 1-0. So for me, I'm gonna call this one for Forest as well. 1-0, pretty much relegating Chelsea to the Europa League. And well, I think if they were to win the Europa Conference League, I think that automatically qualifies them for the Europa League, if memory serves me correctly, Christoph. Right. So either way, Chelsea, I feel, will be playing Europa League come next season. So you could either look at it as a demotion from the Champions League by Forest, or you could look at it as an elevation to the Europa League because they're playing the Conference League this season. But I have to give Forest. I think
I
Forest
mean,
has had a very good season, so I'm just
uh,
gonna follow through with them
I
to the
mean,
end.
Chelsea could lose the Conference League. We know Anthony is in Ballon d'Or farm, so anything could happen.
That would definitely be one of the bigger upsets in all honesty if Real Betis was to get the win over Chelsea there. But I'm also hearing where the Spanish FA, Christoph, have postponed that Betis game in the La Liga in order to give them some extra days of rest to take on this Chelsea outfit as well. So they are definitely taking this game serious. They are looking to get silverware. And it should be a tough fight for Chelsea, in all honesty. Not only are they fighting for their life in terms of a big matchup versus Forest, they will then have to face Betis come Wednesday, I believe, is the final. So they will get what, 2 to 3 days of rest before taking on Betis on Wednesday. So that is a cause for concern. This would be almost Arsenal playing their full strength versus what Fulham it was, and then running into PSG midweek,
Bournemouth.
yeah, yeah, and then end up losing. So it could possibly be a case of that for Chelsea as well. They could possibly lose to Forest in a very emotionally draining game, and then carry that hangover into that Europa Conference League and lose that game as well. So if I was a betting man, if I saw Chelsea losing to Forest, I would immediately throw some money behind Betis to follow up with a win over them in the Europa Conference League as well. But time will definitely tell. But it should be a fascinating last day, Christoph. It might not be a shootout at the top of the table in terms of determining the winners, but definitely the excitement doesn't cease as you look. I mean, if you're a neutral, you have to be following all 4 games. You would have to be following the City game, which all games are taking place simultaneously. So you'll be tracking the Newcastle game, you'll be tracking the City game, the Aston Villa game, and the Forest versus Chelsea. Those are the 4 games that neutrals will be keeping a very close eye on. And every goal could change the dynamics, Christoph, in terms of jostling for a position in that league table. It should be fascinating stuff come Sunday.
Definitely, yeah, it will be definitely interesting. I think most people will probably looking at the Nottingham Forest Chelsea game, the neutrals anyway. The other matches have potential. Uh, I get, like you said, Aston Villa versus United. United look very much lacking in quality. Especially watching them in that Europa League final. They look the quality was not there. Misplaced passes, running into opposition. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Aston Villa absolutely demolished them at Old Trafford.
Hmm. That would be a sad way to end the season, in all honesty. That would definitely not resonate well with the fans, and many may very well already be calling for Amarin's head.
I
You know,
mean,
especially having lost in Europe. If they were to be demolished, I'm sure the players would be booed off the field over there at Old Trafford. What was once the
um,
theater of dreams, Christoph, seemed to have turned into the theater of nightmares.
it's been the theater of nightmares for several seasons now, to be fair.
Well,
Um,
it has it been this bad though since the departure of Sir Alex, or is this what rock bottom looked like for Manchester United?
Hard to tell, rock bottom could have been relegation. Again, they barely escaped relegation, people.
But you don't really see that happening next season, Christoph. I mean, looking ahead, do you see Manchester United being caught up in a relegation battle, having no Europe to really play and can focus solely on
I,
EPL football?
I won't say that I don't see it happening. What I will say is that it should not be happening next season. So, there is that, it should not be happening next season.
Mm. Well, I mean, you
Again,
definitely have to credit the likes of Aston Villa, though. I mean, these teams have really played well all season and have put themselves in a real position to really finish in that top five and get European football come next season. Aston Villa, in particular, credit must be given. I mean, who would have thought that Aston Villa would have made it this far in the Champions League as well? They made it all the way to the quarterfinals and were narrowly edged out by a PSG team, which could very well go on to lift the cup. So the Aston Villa fans have to be extremely proud of the season they've had, and they should cap it by finishing in a Champions League position and making it another historic birth and continuing that rich European heritage which exists at Aston Villa. I mean, they should be brushing Manchester United aside with ease, as you said. I mean, I haven't heard of any major injuries over there at Aston Villa, so all the big name players should be guns blazing. The Watkins, the Rogers, you know, who have been the outstanding players for them at Aston Villa. But
I
speaking of
mean,
Aston Villa, though, Christoph, our own Leon Bailey, what's going on with Leon Bailey? Will we be seeing Leon Bailey at Aston Villa come next season? He seemed to have fallen right down the pecking order.
it's kind of like I told you, we have seen Leon Bailey's ceiling. Um,
So you're saying we've seen his ceiling already?
we've seen
Do-
his ceiling. We have seen the best of Leon
Wow.
Bailey.
When did we see that though?
Probably last season.
Last season.
Probably last
Mm.
season was Leon Bailey's best season, and I don't see it getting any better for him.
So you're saying that's it. He peaked last season and he's gone over the hill, you're saying.
I don't not necessarily that he's gone over the hill. He is at he was at his best last season. Last season was probably the best season you will ever see from Leon Bailey. And season might come where potentially you go to a lesser league and you get better stats than you would get than in a EPL. But that is it. And I said it to you last season that I don't think we see Leon Bailey getting any better than this. For me, his decline started potentially when whatever arguments or disagreements he's been having when he goes away on international with Jamaica. His problem seems to start there where he sees himself as above the national team, and that's fine if you are better than the rest of players on the national team, that's fine, but there's still a level of humility that you would potentially expect. You keep your head down, you work. I think it's a case where Leon Bailey in his head thinks he is better than he is, and no, it's potentially affecting his performances, right?
Factoring in injuries as well, I must say, he's been hit by a few injuries, a few niggling injuries. And then again, I mean, the coach is seeing him in training. The fact that you had to go out and bring in wingers who play the same position as Ali and Bailey speak volumes, in all honesty. I mean, they went out and got Rashford and they went out and got Asensio. They also got Marlin from Dortmund, who can play as a striker on the flanks as well. So, I mean, Emery pretty much went out and got three players who can play the same position as Ali and Bailey. And since those players' arrival, I doubt Leon Bailey has started a game for Aston Villa. So that in itself speaks volumes. Personally, I don't see him remaining at Aston Villa. I think if a good offer comes in from him, possibly from the Saudi League, we may very well see him playing in the Desert League with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo.
Um, I mean, it's a potential to shine and get a big payday over there. So, we'll see.
For sure, definitely, definitely.
But
And I would
again,
jump at, if I was him, I would definitely jump at that opportunity because the shelf life of footballers these days is very short. And of course, you want to position yourself so that you can take care of yourself and your family once you hang up the football boots. Generational wealth is the term I hear being thrown around these days. So, I mean, going to following in the footstep of Duran. Christoph, me remember Duran have made that transition at such a young age as well. One would have thought he would have chosen career over the big bag, but not at all. It's a professional, it's a business decision. It reminded me of Oscar, the likes of Oscar, when they left Chelsea to play in
the
China,
Chinese league.
Christoph. Right, that was where the big money was at the time, and at the peak
Neymar.
of their powers, the transition to Chelsea was made. Interesting stuff indeed. But Aston Villa has to be proud of their performance. Newcastle, similarly, I was in the Champions League, 2 years ago? Didn't do so well, could not cope with the pressures of Europe. But again, they missed out on the Champions League last season, so there was no Champions League for them this. And we've seen them cap their season with some silverware, lifting that trophy there, so lifting the Carabao Cup. So they have made their mark as well, and finishing in a Champions League position would cap their season as well, and they would find that it has been a highly successful season for them. So the top teams which are vying can definitely look on with some glee as they have done quite well for themselves, but it is still not over. It is one game to go. This is for all the marbles. This is really to set yourself apart and really take the game to your opponent. So it's big money on the line, Christoph. Big, big money. And it augurs well for the club and it can affect the whole atmosphere and fan base of the club if teams were to finish in a Champions League versus not finishing in a Champions League. That could be the difference between some quality world-class signing and pretty much having to settle for some average players. How motivated how motivated would a player be though, Christoph, to sign for a non-Champions League playing club at this point in time? Do you
I
think
think
that would be a big difference if two teams were to go for your signature?
um definitely in a lot of players' minds, but a lot of other players might think, potentially how many minutes will I get at this Champions League level club? Will I be a starter? Will I be a sub? And it could factor both ways. I, what we've seen over the last 10, 15 years is that players who potentially were not even interested in a certain club, that club, maybe is in the Champions League and they move there, or win the Champions League and they move to those teams. Um, Other players might think, how much game time am I going to get? Am I going to develop? And
Do
so
you
on.
think players really think about the game time, or does the money they are getting pretty
I
much
think
gloss over that?
I think some players
And it's
think
more
about
about
their
the dollars and cents versus time on the pitch.
I think some players do think about how much playing time they get
Mm,
versus how much money they make.
I see, I
Yes,
see.
everybody wants to make a lot of money, but I think not every player, but I think there are a number of players who are thinking about how much game time they're getting versus the money.
So question to you though, does Maresca at Chelsea survive if Chelsea fail to make it into Champions League?
Probably not.
Probably not. So you're saying you would fire Maresca, even if, let's for argument's sake,
No,
say
I'm not
they
saying
f-
I would
they
fire Maresca. I'm saying Chelsea potentially
mm.
fire Maresca if they don't make the Champions League. I'm not saying I fire
But would you
Maresca.
keep
No,
him though? If you were in at
no,
Chelsea, would you keep him?
no, no.
Oh, so you're saying if he doesn't finish Champions League, he's out. So even if
I
he wins the Europa Conference League,
If he wins the Europa Conference League, they would potentially keep him. Um, Not because you know they get a spot in the Europa or whatever, but because you know it's silverware. Chelsea tends to keep the manager if they win silverware. Even if a manager performs well and makes it top four, if they didn't win any silverware, Chelsea tend to fire them. Usually, if he loses to Betis, I think they're going to fire him. But for me, even though Chelsea has somehow made it to they're in a potential Champions League spot at the moment, I think Chelsea, again, even if they this is one of those things again, even if they win the Conference League, this season still has to be seen as a failure, in my
if they
opinion.
fail to make it to the Champions League,
If they fail to make it to the Champions League, this season is a failure. Um, the Conference League was a very easy competition. Chelsea didn't even play their best team for majority of that tournament, just to show you how the quality there is
right,
low.
right, right. I
Um,
agree.
so they could have their starters, their A team could have focused on the league, and
Right, for sure.
they did struggle a lot throughout the season, and we did see where they struggled a lot when Cole Palmer was not playing well. The 2 billion plus that they've spent on squad building clearly has not worked. They've gone through a number of managers who just can't get this crop of players to perform at to a level that their price tag would indicate. I would say they've spent a lot of money on the likes of a Nicholas Jackson, Modric, um,
Enzo, Caicedo,
Enzo Caicedo, and really the only performer has for the last 3 to 4 years has been Cole Palmer. So I'm not saying it's Maresca's fault.
right?
I do not blame him. It's not his fault. He came in, he inherited his team, hasn't made a lot of signings, so to speak. It's definitely the fault of the Chelsea management. The recruitment has been poor. They're overpaying for players, potentially not even scouting them properly. From what I can tell, it seems, again, in my opinion, and for the longest time, it seems like Chelsea looks at who the other big teams are going for and tries to sign them, in my opinion. That's what I have noticed.
Ah, indeed, indeed. Time will definitely tell what the future holds for Chelsea and indeed the other teams vying for that Champions League position. But thank you again, Christoph, for coming on board and sharing your thoughts and your opinions. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on those big games come Sunday. Will Chelsea make it in? I think that game between them and Forest is the game to watch. Viewers and subscribers, thank you again for tuning in to us here on Beating the Press podcast. Continue to share, like, and if you haven't subscribed as yet, hit that subscription bell. Leave us your comment. Who will finish in the Champions League positions? But until next time, this is Rafa signing off.